Okay. Okay, I got it. Okay, everyone is able to hear me. So let me start the presentation. So today I will be discussing on batch normalization. Okay, so batch normalization. This is the primary paper which discusses or which came up with the idea of batch normalization. This was by Sergei Ayov and Christian Gedi or something. Okay. So here, if you go through the abstract, it says that training deep neural networks is complicated by the fact that the distribution of each layer's input changes during the training. What do I mean by that? So we already know that if there are inputs, say x1, x2, dot dot up to xn, we first normalize these inputs. Okay, what do we mean by normalization? We subtract the mean and divide by standard deviation for each of the inputs. Now what happens is, in deep neural networks, these inputs then feed into some neurons, okay, hidden layers. Now these inputs feed into these neurons, okay, and then finally you have some output here. Now how is this network trained is that the output of the first layer goes into the input of the second layer. Okay, so these become the input to the second layer. Now the first layer inputs are already normalized, but the second layer inputs are not normalized. That the output of a hidden layer to the next hidden layer, for example, outputs of this layer becomes the input to the next layer, but the outputs of this layer is not normalized. Okay, and these, when we do forward propagation and then we do backward propagation, what happens is the theta values which are associated with each of these, okay, theta 1 1, theta 1 2, theta 1 3, which are associated with each of these connections, they keep changing, because every forward propagation and every backward propagation you have this theta distribution. Say this is theta 1 distribution for this complete layer. This is a full matrix which is for this complete layer. um, this layer of connection, suppose this is the theta matrix, and this theta matrix, the values keep changing as you keep training, as you go on training this network through forward propagation and through backward propagation. These theta values get trained, and so the inputs to each layer keep changing, each hidden layer keep changing, and the distribution also keep changing. So that's the idea. So suppose this is a single neuron, okay, and this is what is called as the internal covariance shift, okay, which is here, the internal covariance shift. So we define so as they have written, we define internal covariance shift as the change in the distribution of network activation due to change in network parameters during training. So as you train, what happens is the network, suppose this is a single neuron, this one is a single neuron, okay, and there are multiple such neurons, and this is feeding to the next layer. Okay, so next layer is say this is the next layer. Now here, from this layer to this layer, what happens, the output of this, depending on, suppose you are feeding in inputs which are x1, um, which are, suppose x1 vector goes here, x2 vector goes here, x3 vector goes here, something like that. Then what happens is the output of this x1 can have, so this you have tables like x1, x2, x3, like this you have in lot of entries, say 100 entries. Now if you pass all these 100 entries through this neuron, you will have 100 outputs, okay, through this, and these 100 outputs can have a distribution. Okay, suppose the initial distribution of these 100 outputs was here. Okay, this is the initial distribution. As you go forward and then train it back, what will happen is the W matrix, which is the theta matrix, and the B, which is the theta 0. Okay, theta 0 means the biasing, and the transformation, which is the linear transformation, theta x. So the output here is given by theta x plus theta 0, or theta 0 plus theta x vector. Theta is the complete vector, okay, and or say you can put it for this case, you can put, for single neuron you can put it as theta 0 plus theta 1x. For this one the output will be theta 0 plus theta 2 x, not theta, say theta 0. Yes, for this one you can put it as theta 0 plus theta 2x, something like that. Um, so for 100 different inputs, if you pass them through this neuron, you will have some output for some 100 outputs, and for 100 outputs you will have a certain distribution. Say the distribution is like this. Then once you go forward and then come backward, the distribution will change because the theta values change. Theta value change and the biasing values, theta 0 values also change. So because of that, the distribution of the output for each of the neurons keep changing. Okay, so the training, now before training, what we did is we have already normalized x1 and x2. So their distribution is fixed. Their distribution is typically around standard deviation is set to be 1 and mean is set to 0. That's how once you do the normalization of a data, then that's what happens. But the normalization has not happened in the inner layers where a lot of change of variable is occurring. A lot of change of parameters are occurring because of forward and backward propagation. Okay, so that's what we are aiming here. We are trying to fix the distribution in the inner layers as well. Okay, and that is called as batch normalization. We do it by taking small batches of data and keep doing it for all neurons in all different layers. May not be all neurons, but you may do it also for some layers. So the typical formula for this is you take a mini batch of data. This is done mini batch by mini batch. So suppose you have, this is your data x1, x2, say x3, and suppose there are 1000 entries in this. You can take a mini batch of say size 10. Okay, and for that mini batch, pass that data into now for any particular neuron in the network. Suppose this is the network. Suppose you choose this neuron. Okay, for this neuron, once you pass x1, x2, x3, x4 to the input layer and then pass it through it, at suppose we are only now interested at for a particular neuron in a particular layer. In that layer you can find out what is the mean mu b, mean for this mini batch. Okay, you pass this these 10, choose any 10 out of these 1000, okay, elements, and then pass it to this neural network and then find out what is the mean for this mini batch, and that will be 1 by 10 summation 1 by 10 summation I equal to 1 to 10 xi. Xi is whatever you are getting at inputs of whatever xi is the outputs of this. Okay, you are trying to normalize the outputs of this. So xi is the xi are 10 outputs which you'll get from this neuron. Okay, for these 10 entries, you will get 10 outputs. For that you calculate the mean. For that you calculate the standard deviation, okay, for those 10 entries for this neuron. Then simply normalize this. How do you normalize? You take those 10 for every entry you do entry minus the mean divided by standard deviation. Okay, divided by standard deviation, which is square root of variance. This is actually the variance calculated. Variance, standard deviation is square root of variance. Why we have added a small, we add a small epsilon here. That small epsilon is to eliminate any chance of this operation getting overflown if there is a divide by 0, because if somehow this sigma b tends to 0, if this tends to 0, then this can blow up to infinite. So that's why you put a small epsilon here. Then after that we can after that so this is the normalized output for this 10, this mini batch, for a mini batch of 10, and you can repeat it for all 10 you can repeat it of 100 mini batches, which you will find which you can get out of this table. And for every mini batch you can calculate the normalized output. Okay, and this normalized output will be for every element. Okay, so after that there is, now here the network will try, what network will try to do until this point, what network will try to do until this point, sorry, what network will try to do until this point is it will try to normalize it will try to normalize this output, okay, to have a distribution which is like this, which is having a mean at 0 and whose standard deviation is equal to 1. Okay, for every neuron it will attempt to do this, okay, for every mini batch. Now sorry I okay, so we had got disconnected. Let's start from where we left. So for every neuron it will try to normalize the output of every neuron to something with a mean of 0 and standard deviation of 1. But it may not be so that the mean of 0 and standard deviation of 1 is always ideal for every neuron, okay, although it will normalize the Bowl function of the Bowl error function with respect to every neuronal output, and thus it will help us train faster. Okay, why we are doing all this batch normalization is because we want to make the training faster. For example, if this is x1 and x2 and suppose this is the error function, this is the error function and this is x1 and x2, we are looking at making this Bowl function something like this rather than having a Bowl function something of this sort, which might be difficult to which might take longer to train, okay, which we have already seen while we are discussing the error functions of linear regression and logistic regression. Okay, so that's what we are trying to attempt. We are trying to make all of these outputs for every neuron, the distribution of the outputs to be normalized within a range, okay, where the normal standard deviation is 1 and the mean is 0. But it may be so that the network actually would perform better if for certain neuron the output is having a different distribution, okay, a different distribution like with a mean at some mean m1 and a standard deviation of with a mean of say beta and standard deviation of gamma, okay, and we want to, in batch normalization we also make provision for that. Okay, we normalize everything first to this mean 0 standard deviation 1 and then give the network a option to switch to some other distribution if required. Okay, so this is what we'll try to do in this. So suppose this is a basic network in which I have input x1 and x2, okay, and then this goes into a network which has, say this is your theta vector, so this is theta 1 1 and theta 1 2, this is theta 2 1, theta 2 2, something of this sort. Then you can always calculate z1 1 and z2 1. z1 1 is theta 1 1 x1 plus theta 2 1 x2. Okay, so you can calculate. So suppose this is your x1 x2 table, okay, and it has say 1000 entries. You can always calculate this z1 value for all these 1000 entries, so you'll have 1000 outputs for this, and for this 1000 outputs you can calculate the mean for this layer, mean of the layer 1 and standard deviation for the layer 1. Okay, so which is represented by these two formulas, the mean and the variance of the of one layer. So this is given by the sum of all the z outputs for every input I, and then taken we have taken mean of this and standard deviation of this. After taking this, so activation, once we apply activation to this output, so then it goes from z1 goes to a1 after we apply activation. But before applying activation we apply batch normalization. How do you do apply batch normalization? We take each one of these 1000 inputs, 1000 outputs, z1 values, and subtract the mean and divide by standard deviation, which is done here. Okay, then what happens is the distribution of all these 1000 outputs becomes something of this sort, where you have mean 0, standard deviation 1 for z1 outputs for all the 1000 inputs. Okay, then once that is there, then we give the network an option to choose a gamma and a beta so that it can multiply this to this z norm, okay, to these 1000 outputs, multiply and add to these 1000 outputs to create any other transformation, okay, any other distribution, any other distribution that it wants, okay, some other distribution with a sigma of um, with a standard deviation of gamma and mean of beta. So this is what this function does. Okay, so first we normalize, then normalize such that the mean is 0 and standard deviation 1, and then we give another option to actually denormalize, to take it somewhere else. Okay, if gamma is equal to 1 and beta is equal to 0, then we still have the normal distribution, we still have the distribution uh, which is the normal process of normalization. Okay, we still have that option, but we also give the network option to choose some other distribution if it wants. Okay, so this is what this network does. So for every layer, for example, this is the second layer. So for the second layer, the inputs to the second layer are now outputs of the first hidden layer. Okay, so similarly, so this is the output of the lth layer. So this is calculated as theta L matrix. Theta L matrix is this matrix, all these weights, all these weights. Okay, so this goes as a theta matrix, multiplies by the output of the previous hidden layer. Output is calculated by taking the activation, applying activation. So maybe you will take a sigmoid activation function over the Z1 function, Z1 outputs, and then this gives you the A1 outputs. Okay, and but before this, before applying the activation, what we are doing is we are using batch normalization. Batch normalization is this process. Okay, then this so Z2 is now using A1 and A2 as its inputs. Okay, so here the second layer output is equal to the second layer theta values multiplied by the A or the activated outputs of the previous layer. Then taking these as the inputs, we apply them. So we can calculate, we find ZL, we find this lth layer. So this is, I have corrected this, I have taken this image from internet, but we are using theta as our multipliers, the convention for our multipliers rather than W. Many places you will find W as the weights. Here we are using theta from the very beginning, that's why I'm sticking to it here. So this, after doing this, you get to Z tilde L, which is your batch normalized outputs, batch normalized pre-activation outputs here, and then you apply activation function. This is the activation function GL, which I have written. It may be sigmoid, it may be ReLU, whatever, and then you get the activation outputs, activated outputs. This then can again go through another layer of batch normalization. So this is how it works. So if you have say a input, so how it works is, so suppose you have inputs X. Let me clean this up now. So here, apart from having the original, now here we also have something called as the, so this is your, this part contains your theta vector. Okay, and this part we also enter into both of them something which is the theta 0, or sometimes also written as the biasing unit. Okay, the biasing unit, for every layer we also apply a biasing unit. So the output is given by this formula x. If the x is the input vector, this is the, if x is this input vector, the z vector here, the z1 vector here will be given by is calculated on the basis of theta 1 vector and the biasing. Okay, on the biasing the first layer, this gives us the output for the Z values of the first layer. Okay, Z values of the first layer. This first layer then undergoes batch normalization. How do you undergo batch normalization? You use this. Okay, so in this you introduce two more parameters. So you have, when you do batch normalization, you add beta and you have gamma. These are two parameters which are used for batch normalization. So this is your batch normalization. So this gives you the intermediate Z values, which are Z tilde for the first layer. After getting the intermediate Z values, you apply activation function. It can be ReLU, leaky ReLU, TANH, okay, something like that. So then you will get the first layer activated outputs. Okay, and then this can go to the next layer, in which you apply theta, the second layer, the biasing for the second layer, and then this gives you Z values for the second layer. Again, you can do batch normalization by applying a second beta value and a second gamma value for the second layer, and then this can you get again Z tilde 2. Here we apply activation and you get A2. So something like this you can keep continuing. Okay, so here, apart from the original parameters which we anyways had to train, which were the theta matrix and the B and the biasing vectors, or the biasing values. For every layer you had a theta matrix, you had the theta matrix, and you had a B, which you anyways had to train through forward propagation and through backward propagation. So you train the values of theta and B. Now in addition to this, you also have to train beta, and you have to train gamma. So for every layer there are two additional parameters which are added. Okay, now these additional parameters, now how was the earlier parameters trained? These were trained by theta is equal to theta minus alpha dE is the error, final error vector, final error with respect to the given outputs, by d theta. For every theta value we used to do this, and for every B value we used to do, which was theta 0 value actually. In our case we used to be equivalent to theta 0. Okay, so that also we used to do similarly. Theta 0 is equal to theta 0 minus alpha d by d theta 0. In addition to that, now you have, for every forward and back propagation, you also do this. Beta is equal to beta minus alpha d beta by dE by d beta, and gamma is equal to gamma minus alpha d gamma dE by d gamma. So this is how you do back for you also can train beta and gamma for. So these two additional parameters add for every layer, every hidden layer. Now here one more thing which we have to note is that because this one beta is what? Beta is something which we are, if we go back to this function here, I am while batch normalizing, I'm subtracting mu. While doing this normalization, I'm subtracting mu, but then while translating to find the Z tilde L, I'm adding beta. Okay, so that means this is a constant mu, which is getting subtracted here, and then I'm adding another constant here. So basically these are two constant operation, one is a subtraction and one is addition. So I can actually skip adding any bias values. Bias value in the sense, here if you see this bias value at every layer, what it is doing, it is trying to, suppose this is this output has a distribution like this. If I add a bias B, what happens is this distribution shifts by b distance. But anyways, I am doing this operation, I am adding beta. Okay, anyways I am adding beta, which is doing the same operation. So in in a sense, or if you think about it, I can actually throw out b. Okay, I don't need b. So I don't need b. I can only train now for theta, beta and gamma. Okay, so so you just have one additional parameter rather than two additional parameters. So you need not add or any biasing. If you are using batch normalization, you need not add any bias unit to every hidden layer. Okay, but if you are using a framework, a machine learning framework like TensorFlow, you don't have to think about all this. But these are good to know if you are in your future machine learning related career. You might need to know all these basics. Okay. So how do you work in mini batches? Sorry, how do you work with this? Is that another thing is about mini batches? I have already told that we work on this in mini batches. So for every mini batch, so how do you do it? Let me show it. So you take, for example, you have 1000 rows of data, say x1, x2, x3, up to xn. You have and you have 1000 rows of this data. Suppose you take mini batches of size 10, and you can construct mini batches of, say, mini batches x1, mini batch x2, mini batch x3. Okay, and each of this mini batch contains 10 data sets. Okay, 10 sets, 10 sets of this data, each of this mini batch. For each of this mini batch, you will find, if you go through, so if this is your network, uh, this is x1. If this is your network, just a minute, and this is x1, x2, x3, x4, and you put 10 of these in one shot. You go through forward propagation and then through backward propagation. For you will find theta, you will find beta, and you will find gamma. Okay, for every layer, for every hidden layer, you will find these matrices. And so for every mini batch, you will have a value of beta and you will have a value of gamma for every mini batch. So you um, so yeah, and you keep updating it. You'll keep updating it, and after you have went through multiple mini batches, you will be able to find you know, one optimal beta and gamma in this. But what happens in test time? Okay, in test time, that's what at test time, testing time, you don't have mini batches. Okay, you may have just x1, x2, x3, x4, only one set given to you. You don't have rows of data given to you during testing. Okay, you have just one single set given to you while, say, testing. And then if you don't have a mini batch, how do you calculate, you know, mean and standard deviation? Okay, if you cannot calculate mean and standard deviation, then you cannot uh, sorry, these um, so you figure out the beta and gamma value after doing mini batch training. Okay, but for this mini batch training, you need mu and sigma. Okay, you need mu and sigma for every layer. You need mu and you need variance, which is sigma and mean for every layer. Okay, this mean and sigma calculation is only possible if you have multiple data sets. Okay, if you have just single data set, you cannot find mean and standard deviation. Okay, what is the mean of 4? It is 4. But what is the standard deviation of 4? It's 0. Or it's almost, you know, it's trivial, or it's something which you can say it does not make sense to have a standard deviation of a single row or a single number in this case. So at testing time, what we do is we try to we take the mean and variance of we cannot take the mean and variance of just one example. So what we do is at training time we estimate the weighted averages of mu and sigma across multiple mini batches. Okay, at training time itself we calculate this mean and sigma. Okay, at training time we calculate mu and sigma for all neurons during using the mini batches. Okay, and for every mini batch what will happen is this mu and sigma gets updated and you average the mean and sigma. Okay, so if this is a your network, for every neuron you have mu and sigma. Okay, for every mini batch, so suppose you have 10 mini batches, you can have mu1 sigma1. Then for the second mini batch you will have mu2 sigma2. Third mini batch you have mu3 sigma 3, something of this sort. Then you take the mean of all these means and the mean of all these standard deviations and store it and use it. Now this mean also typically it is taken as a moving average or a exponentially weighted average. The exponentially weighted average is given by nu average is equal to say some k which is between 0 and 1 multiplied by accumulated average multiplied by accumulated average plus 1 minus beta of current sample. Okay, so you can read about it. This is called the exponentially weighted average. So this exponentially weighted average is stored during the training time itself, and during the testing time we use this final mu and sigma which are stored for every neuron for and that is what is used for subtracting from the testing outputs. Okay, for each neuron. This is similar to the way in which you used to do for linear regression and logistic regression, where you used to store the mean and standard deviation during the training time and used to use that mean and standard deviation during the testing time. Okay, so similarly here also the mean and standard deviation are stored for each layer and then they are used during the testing time. But in TensorFlow, while you are using, let's go to our code and I will show you how it is done here. So this code is already run, so I will not run it again. So one thing which you now will have to remember is that the way you apply batch normalization and dropout, activation and dropout, is follows this step BAD. So first you do batch normalization, then you apply activation, then you do dropout. Batch normalization helps you typically to speed up the training process. Dropout helps you in actually in regularization. Batch normalization helps you in regulation to some extent, because there is mini batch averaging across the mini batches. That's why it helps in somewhat of a regularization, but it is not designed for regularization. Designed for speeding up the process of training. And dropout is used for regularization. So you first have suppose you create a layer, add a batch norm layer, then add activation, then add dropout. This is the typical process flow which is recommended by most of the machine learning experts. So the way this is the basic cat and dog dataset which we have already worked over. So I am starting with so this is the cat and dog dataset, and this date code you already have. I have modified the code where we created the model. Okay, I have just modified the code here at the model stage. Here you can see I have changed. Earlier the layers used to be written like this: layer.con. Activation used to be within the layer command itself. Okay, so layer was created and activation was applied. But now we will fill in activation after creation of layer. For example, here in the first layer, after creation of a layer, I'm adding batch normalization. The command for it is like this, and after that I'm applying the activation ReLU function and then dropout. Okay, so layer, then normalization, then ReLU activation, then dropout. Similarly here, layering, then batch normalization, then activation, then dropout. BAD, it is following that BAD process. The max pooling is in between. So overall, the architecture of the network is not disturbed, but I have added batch normalization and dropout everywhere. So, and this is how you can apply batch normalization. Nothing else in TensorFlow. It's very easy. And after that, this is the network architecture. You can see here it starts with a convolution layer, then you have batch normalization, then activation, then dropout, then max pooling, then convolution layer, then batch normalization, then activation, dropout, max pooling. Like this is follows. Okay, so here the training process is all the same. Here one more thing which I had not discussed earlier is this batch size. Batch size within this model.fit is a thing which you can use, like how many data sets are pulled into for one at one time for training. Okay, if you increase this batch size, your memory requirement increases, but your training becomes faster. But if you decrease this batch size, your training becomes slower, because every batch of training happens only on smaller sets of data. It can take longer time, but it can help you if your memory you are running short on memory. Okay. So, but this has nothing to do with batch normalization. Okay, this is a different thing. This is only for memory management by TensorFlow. This is nothing to do with batch normalization as such. And yeah, so this is how you can try. I have just run few iterations. If you run more iterations, you'll be able to reach more than 80%, 85% here. Apart from this, I wanted to discuss one more thing, which is called as data augmentation. Data augmentation is if you have an image of, say, these cats and dogs. Okay, wherever you have the amount of data which you have is limited. Okay, and there is a scope for creating even more data by using the same data which you have. For example, a cat, I don't know if I can draw a cat image. So suppose this is a cat image. Now this cat image, if I move this cat image like this, it still is a cat. Okay, it appears as a cat to a human being. So that means the network should also recognize this as a cat. Okay, or if I make this a black and white image, or if I just shift this cat image little bit to the right or to the left, or I zoom this image little bit. Okay, so rotation, zoom, or I flip this image horizontally, or I flip this image vertically, or I mirror image this. Okay, so all this still makes the image keeps the image as a cat. Okay, so there are certain operations which may completely distort it. For example, if I take I don't know, in this case it might be, for example, your I have to think of, for example, the number dataset, MNIST dataset. Okay, MNIST dataset, it may be translationally invariant. Okay, you can translate it little bit to the top, little bit to the right, but it is not rotationally invariant. For example, a 6 can appear as a 9. Okay, 6 can appear as a 9 if it is rotated. Okay, if it is rotated, a 6 can appear as a 9. So that's why it is not rotationally invariant. So certain data sets you have to think about which data set is can be rotated or moved or translated in which way, and that will still be acceptable data. Okay, what this helps you to do is it helps you to do a lot of regularization in the data. It helps you to recognize find more general effects in the image, general information in the image rather than specific information. Okay, for example, the cat moving around, the image moving around, or image zooming out, this kind of gives the network a feel or the understanding that this you're trying to make the network understand that what you're looking for is a cat face. It doesn't matter whether it is in this angle or that angle, whether it is zoomed out or zoomed in. Okay, so the more regularized or more amount of data in general context that you can throw to the network, the better it will perform in a unknown for a unknown test case. Okay, so that is what we do in data augmentation. So just by doing data augmentation like in 10 different ways for every image, you can, suppose you had 1000 images, you can transform to 10,000 images. Okay, by doing 10 different operations on this image. Okay, so this is what for this TensorFlow already has a library which is called as data gen library. Let me come here. So this is what which is the image generator library. So you can import this as image data generator. It is not essential that you always use this library. There can be other types of data for which there might not be a library available, and you think there can be data augmentation which can be done on that data. So then you might have to write your own code to create augmented data sets. So here, as these are image data sets, so we'll use this image data generator. In this, we can give commands on what kind of data generation we want. So I'm applying horizontal flip equal to true, vertical flip equal to rotation range equal to 30. That means it will rotate between 0 to 30 degree the images. Width shift equal to 0.2. That means the length of the image is considered as 1. Okay, from end to end is considered as 1, and height of the image also from end to end is considered as 1. So if I'm giving width shift range equal to 0.2, that means the width can be shifted from left to right by 20% and from top to bottom by 20%. And then the xtrain array is given into datagen dot by using datagen dot fit. So this then assigns xtrain data set to this data generator. Then you can apply. So this is one test on this data generator. So I am creating training generator. Sorry, training generator is you can use datagen.flow to create a generator, okay, which will be generating images in batches. So here I'm applying xtrain and ytrain. Xtrain are the images from this data set, which are the training data sets, and ytrain are the corresponding labels. Batch size is 32. For every call to this training generator, it will give us 32 different images. Just to test it, I have done for datagen.flow, I have done for a batch size of 9 here. But this training generator will be used later, but here just for showing you how these outputs come out to be. So here you can see I have put up 9 images from this data generator, and you can see you can create it has changed that dog to a different angle and vertically flipped, and there are also horizontal shifts which can be clearly seen on this. This is a completely 90-degree shift on this dog. Okay, so this is creating much more diverse data without changing the context, okay, uh, or the primary data of the image, which is a dog or a cat. After this, I have put up the same network which I trained earlier, the same network again created. Here, instead of model.fit, we use model.fit generator. In this, we provide a generator which is the training generator, validation data which are xtest, ytest. Here I'm not putting validation data as from generator set, but the normal validation data which we had separated out earlier. Only the training data is coming from the generator. Steps per epoch. So we are creating 100 steps per epoch. 100 steps means there are 32 for every step. There are 32 images which are created, because training generator, the batch size is 32. So for every call it will create 32 images. So 100 steps means 3200 images per epoch. Okay, because every epoch has 100 steps, so you can create 3200 images per epoch, and it will run it for 10 different epochs. So every epoch will also have different images which will be thrown out by this data generator. You can change the steps per epoch and you can create more images. So this is trained only for 10 epochs. You can increase the number of epochs and you will see the accuracy increases even more. But this is a much better way of really training, because you are now moving a lot of data specific information, okay, and are creating more um, data structure specific information. You are removing a lot of data structure specific information, like its size, shape, angle. All these are structure specific information, but you are giving out a lot of options, where the data which you're looking for, which is the cat or a dog, can be present in the image, which is not there in the original training set. But by using data generator, you are able to create a lot of other options for the training set to look at, for the machine learning to train on. Okay, so this is all I wanted to discuss today. So next time on, I plan to discuss a little bit on encoder decoder and then variational encoder, which will be which will move our domain from just recognition to generation. We'll be using machine learning to generate new data, uh, and it is a completely different and most state-of-the-art applications of machine learning comes out of it, where machines are able to write on their own poems, draw their own paintings. I don't know, we may not be able to go too deep into it, but what we'll be doing will be quite interesting. Okay, so thank you for now. See you again later.